And welcome to everybody who's joined us today for this event on building your brand through inclusivity. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kelly O'Dore and I am the Marketing Director for Bookster. And this event is in collaboration with Damian Sheridan, who's also here today from the Book Direct Network. And actually, I'm really excited and a little bit nervous, but ultimately excited to be covering this topic. And I'm delighted to be here live with some great guests who are here to provide their wisdom and their top tips today. This isn't a sales webinar. What we're wanting to do and what we're hoping you'll get out of this is a bit of inspiration to think about inclusivity. You know, it's so important and we can see it's not discussed enough in our industry, and yet it can have a major impact on your revenue, on your guest bookings, and really ultimately just making the world just a nicer place to be.
Hi everyone, as Kelly said, my name is Damian Sheridan. I'm the director of the Book Direct Show and the Book Direct Network. And yeah, really thrilled to be able to do this today. And thanks to Kelly for all the work and our fellow guests. What we're going to talk about today is how inclusivity can help us grow our brand and subsequently attract more direct bookings. As we know, I'm all about direct bookings. We're going to talk about the difference between knowing that you have an inclusive business and actually promoting it to potential customers. And we're going to dig into areas where you can improve your inclusivity message with some real life examples. So why are we doing this? I myself have had several personal experiences, which I'd very briefly like to share. One particular booking platform, which we all know, at one time sent guest profile pictures to hosts upon booking requests. I had several of these reflected in several countries and cities across Europe. You might think, hey, they weren't available. But my partner, who has different color skin to me, she's a lot lighter than me, she was able to book the same properties for the same dates immediately afterwards. So I'm not alone out there. I know there's hundreds, thousands of others who have, you know, from time to time have this experience and have this feeling of demoralization, humiliation, and perhaps even trauma as a result of these experiences. Some of you may know of a company called Pontins in the UK. They're a holiday park company, and they were found, I think it was just last year, to have had a checklist of names, Irish names, which were associated with the traveling community. And they were not accepting any new bookings and cancelling bookings as a result of those, because they didn't want any of the traveling community to be on their site. So really the message here is that there are thousands of travelers out there who feel marginalized and who we need to really just to get in front of and let them know that we are there for them. And really remember the words accommodation, being accommodating, hosting, hospitality. You know, these are words that should be at the core of our everyday business. So I just wanted to kind of reaffirm those particular words. So I'm going to go back to Kelly and she's going to introduce our guests today.
Perfect, Damien, thank you. Firstly, let's start with Victoria O'Connell of Go Lightly.
Hi, my name is Victoria O'Connell, a CEO of Go Lightly. We are a community of women, a home sharing and vacation rental platform for women where men can travel too, but you know, it's a community of women there. And we launched in January 2020, so just into COVID. Yeah, we have a team of people and yeah, we're based in the United States. Looking forward to travel opening up and getting back. I mean, as everybody I'm sure is looking forward to that too.
Perfect. Okay, Anne-Marie Barry from Guide Dogs, could you introduce yourself for the people who don't already know you?
Yeah, I'm Anne-Marie Barry. I'm the Policy and Campaigns Manager for Guide Dogs Scotland. We're a UK-based charity. We assist everybody with sight loss, right from children through to adults. And we're most well known, obviously, for our guiding dogs.
Perfect, thank you. And last but not least, Lynn Hetherington, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Could you introduce yourself?
My name's Lynn Hetherington. I am a guide dog owner. I have my second guide dog, Yosie, and I am part of the campaigns team with Anne-Marie and a number of other guide dog owners.
Wonderful. Brilliant. Thank you. And welcome to all of our guests. Today, we're going to be talking about how we can use inclusivity to build a brand. Let's get started very briefly about what a brand actually is, because I work in marketing and there are 1,000 definitions of what a brand is. But the essence is that it is this intangible element that people use to recognize you, recognize your company, and understand your company. And a brand is something you can't see, you can't touch it, you can't hold it, but you know it or you feel it. And I was looking at the stats the other day. Brand is the reason why there are 1.9 billion servings of the Coca-Cola family drunk each day. And when they started, they were only selling 9 a day. So people have a perception. Coca-Cola has a better flavor, a higher quality. It's cooler to drink it. It's sexier to drink it than maybe a supermarket own brand. And people are willing to pay a higher price to get that sensation. And I don't just choose Coca-Cola at random, by the way. Ignoring how I feel about Coca-Cola, their inclusivity policy is superb. And you can see it running through all of their adverts, all their promotions, everything they do on their website. So an important part of branding is your values. It's what people believe you represent. And this will help you build trust. It will create and form relationships. And ultimately, it's going to give you a competitive edge. So I don't know if you remember this. It's going a couple of years back. There was a real hoo-ha when it was discovered that Volkswagen, amongst others, but Volkswagen in particular, had been cheating on their emissions tests. Now, this was shocking because this was Volkswagen. It had strong brand values for being reliable, honest, decent. And that's some of the reasons why people bought so many of their vehicles, and they damaged this enormously by deciding to cheat the rules. Now, the key about your brand is that although you may think your values are clear, your guests and your potential guests may not have that same view. They might not see what you represent and how welcoming you are unless you're being explicit. And actually, just taking that one step further before I finish, thinking about your services, unless you distinctly explain what you offer, or what you could offer and what you would be willing to offer, then you really could be excluding some groups and missing out on bookings. So that's a brand in a nutshell. Damian is going to cover now what it means to be inclusive.
Thanks, Kelly. So I'm not an inclusivity expert by any stretch. These opinions are solely based upon my own personal experience. But I think everyone will have a different interpretation of what inclusivity is. I think for the most part, it means not excluding any groups from being involved in something. I think realistically, the vast majority of us have some kind of social bias. For example, I'm sure a lot of us here, if they were to receive a booking request for 4 20-year-old guys, would you assume that this is potentially trouble, a party brewing? Would you be likely to perhaps think on the negative side? These are things we just need to be aware of. Do we have some kind of prejudice or bias in our heads, preconceived before we get these requests? Look, at the end of the day, it's your property, so you manage it in any way you will. But I think the vast majority of us are really good people, and we are inclusive in nature. But we don't tend to tell people and prospective guests this enough and publicly state a mission statement or a policy of some sort. And we do have a responsibility to do this, to say that we happily accept all guests, regardless of age, gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, disability, etc. So I'd like to get our guests involved in the discussion here and see what they think and really what started their own businesses and the origins there. So Victoria, if you could just tell me a little bit about Go Lightly and why it exists, and maybe a story or two you could share.
Hi, Damian, and hi everyone, and thanks for having me here. It's been great to have met you all and be doing this. And as I think when we talk about inclusion, it's also providing equal opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be marginalized. So I think it's important to see it like there's so many different aspects of inclusion, and some might potentially look exclusionary for being inclusive and, you know, helping grow that. So Go Lightly was started because I had a bad experience. I've been a vacation rental host for years, since way back in the day. And I had one of my properties listed, and on one of the major sites, I got a booking and accepted it. I'd never even sort of considered not accepting it, to be honest. Accepted it and met the guy, and he ended up having a massive party, stealing everything, trashing my place. There was a big, you know, the police, the council, everything was caught. It was in London. And it was just a total nightmare. My whole place was wrecked. They stole everything from the bar stools to the cleaning equipment, to the TV, to the clothes. And obviously, like, I started thinking to myself, God, I need something to be able to feel more comfortable and safe in, you know, being able to do this, which sort of supplements income. And it just helped me. It's like being able to rent out my space. So I started looking at and talking to people, and you know, we came up with the conclusion that to create a community of women where women do the hosting and the booking. You know, it took inspiration from a lot of the, at the time, there's a lot of female co-working spaces, and I was members of them and felt very comfortable and slightly more sort of safe in, you know, explaining my needs and wants there. So opening up a community of women where they can travel with whomever they wish. There's no, you know, bias on who the travel are, as long as someone within the community is doing the hosting and the booking. And we create an element of trust by providing the community aspect to it, where members get to know each other. They have a profile, they have, you know, they can connect. It's, you know, similar to kind of the LinkedIn connection. So they feel safe when they do. Now, like, you know, are we still learning? Absolutely. We learn every day, and we love to learn from our community, and our community are fantastic in reaching out and saying, you know, we wouldn't mind if you included this. We wouldn't mind if, and we do, because we're young and we're starting. We enjoy that, to be able to provide what we can for our community. But, you know, and I think that's part of inclusion itself, is listening to people out there, educating. You know, we added a you know, diversity and inclusion advisor to help us get it right. And we intend on adding an education team, so that any property managers, owners, you know, we have a zero tolerance policy, and we want to kind of extend that through it. But yeah, enough about us. It's just the idea of inclusion is so important, and it comes, my point here is kind of, stems from reasons for the need for it. So that's basically where we were born from.
That's great. Thank you, Victoria. I'm going to move over to you, yourself, Anne-Marie and Lynn, and just ask you both, what difficulties do you believe are faced by people with disabilities? So if I could ask yourself first, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, I think, Lynn's the expert. I'm just going to kind of tell you what we know as an organisation. As Lynn will say, it's right for people with sight loss, right from booking, right through to turning up at the venue, the accommodation. But like Damian was saying, you know, people's faces drop, and then it's right through to the ease of staying there, and perhaps the additional things that you might need. And going back to what Damian said about the word accommodation, is to meet people's needs and to accommodate them. And I think hopefully Lynn would agree that often doesn't happen. That can be a real challenge. So we thought about access to websites. Some are quite good, apparently, like Airbnb, but others in the kind of calendar sections, choosing dates, can be very inaccessible for individuals. That's true, would you say, Lynn?
Yes. Yeah, I would say that the most of the websites are quite difficult to manage, because they have lots of choices in different areas. Sometimes they can be the bottom of the screen, sometimes it can be a calendar, sometimes it can just be faint writing next to a box, and generally they are quite light in colour, which can be very difficult for a lot of visually impaired and probably elderly people and lots of other people with reading difficulties.
Yeah, so just the sites themselves can be really difficult to access. And I think when we discuss this as a group, many people end up phoning rather than doing an online booking, because it's just easier. I think, Lynn, one of the other points was around a lot of rental accommodation has a category. If you have a pet dog, you can tick that, and there is certain accommodation that's open to you. But under the Equalities Act, all assistance dogs do have right of access. And there's no button, there's no option to indicate that the dog you're bringing along is an assistance dog. So it's trained to a high standard. It is, you know, it's clean, it's well cared for, it's well behaved. It's not an ordinary pet dog that will be jumping on and off sofas and generally, a bit like mine, being naughty. Lynn's dog is exceptionally well behaved. So it's a completely different ball game. So I think those are some of the major obstacles there. Is there anything else you'd like us to cover just now, Damian?
I'm kind of intrigued because I've had plenty of dogs, family dogs over the years, and I know when we travelled, it could be difficult. Lynn, I'm kind of interested to pursue that in terms of, do you find it's an obstacle when you say you have a guide dog to a perspective wherever you're going to stay? Do you feel like you get that there's a barrier there, or people ask questions about how well behaved the dog is, or something like that?
Yeah. There definitely is a huge barrier there. We were trying to book an apartment down in South Shields, and it did have the chat facility. And my husband and I both have guide dogs. So he was chatting, and as soon as he mentioned that we had guide dogs, the tone of the conversation changed completely. And we actually ended up coming off the conversation because it did become so uncomfortable. But sometimes there's no availability to put down that it is guide dogs rather than a pet dog. And we were in a position, at one point we went to a meeting in Dundee and went to a hotel that we had booked through a big online booking service. And we arrived at the hotel only to be met by a very hostile man to say that there was no way that we were staying at the hotel. Now, this hotel was probably about 10 minutes from the city centre, and we were basically told that there was no way that we would be able to stay. We showed them the legal side of things, and he said that he could possibly get a room ready for us in the basement. To which you can imagine we decided that no, we would rather go elsewhere. But even, I mean, that was 7 o'clock at night. We came out and we had to go and find another hotel. So it is very, very difficult. And like Anne-Marie said, we do tend to phone and make as many inquiries that way, because that way you know how you're going to be accepted at the other side when you do arrive.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously we're in this day and age, technology is all based on instant bookings, and every property tries to push instant bookings. You would still feel then in this day and age that does not work?
We do try to do the booking online, and unfortunately the booking online, you get quite a lot of the time you can get a discount because you're online, and if we can't make sure that we know that the people that we are going to, or the hotel that we are going to, knows that we have 2 guide dogs, then we feel that it's important to phone up, because well, we wouldn't want to be in that position, the position we was before. We want to go somewhere that is welcoming. But also the hard thing about not being able to do it online comfortably is that you get the discounts online, but if you phone, you don't get the discounts. You lose the discount that you could automatically get if you filled in the forum and didn't tell them about the dogs.
Yeah, so it's been discriminated against there.
Yeah.
Kelly, I'm going to hand back over to you, and yeah, you're going to look at some top tips.
Yes, thanks, Damian. So in this part, we're going to really want to look at the kind of practical actions that you can take to be more inclusive. Actually, Damian, I think I'm going to start with you. So what would you recommend are realistic actions that property managers could take?
Well, I think we've heard some great points already from the guys about a website alone. How you can be looking at color for a start to help certain target groups. I mean, a website is a really good starting point. I think we've kind of very briefly touched on like a manifesto or a mission statement or a policy, however you want to refer to it. But I think that you will very rarely, apart from some of the huge companies, you'll very rarely see on a company's website some kind of policy or mission statement dedicated to equality and inclusivity. So I think that's a really good starting point. Now the thing is, myself and Kelly are going to look at this in a bit more detail over the next few months and do a couple more of these. So we will keep you all posted on that. But I think that's a really good starting point. I think imagery as well is important. Now it's a tricky one, this, and you don't necessarily want to have to suddenly be picking images that people might think are a little bit too obvious or whatever. I think Bookster have done an amazing job. I implore anyone to have a look at Bookster and what Kelly and her team have done, because the imagery on their site is very subtle. But just very inviting as well and very engaging. So I applaud you, Kelly, and your team there for what you've done.
In all honesty, and I have to say, when we started out this project of looking at our imagery, it was quite scary. I was pretty worried actually of what we were doing, if we were going to go too far, if people were going to kind of push back and be quite critical of what we were doing. And it was difficult. I was definitely nervous, but we spent a lot of time going through other people's websites, looking at how other people use imagery, very specialized websites, to see what they were doing. And our designers, I think, did a cracking job. So yes, the imagery is now on our website, mostly in our features page. And now I've got the job of going through all of our videos, because realistically, when we looked at them, it was so narrow. It was quite painful actually, once I kind of opened my eyes to what I was looking for, and I realized that we just weren't doing a good enough job to kind of reflect not just our clients, but also their guests. There's a whole variety of people out there, and we just weren't representing any of them. So yes, we've done a big job on that. And I think it's kind of kicked us into gear a bit, thinking about how we look after our clients who've got additional needs as well. So as a team, we're working on what services we need to provide and how we communicate that we will provide these extra services. So we have some clients who are hard of hearing, and we know that, and so we have to put all of the communications to those particular clients in writing, and that's fine. And we have literally the same clients who have sight issues, and as a result, we make sure that we call those particular clients if there's something important that we need to communicate with them. But it's kind of being aware of that, and actually saying and having somewhere on our website, which we don't currently have, that says we will do this. This is who we are. We are accommodating. We want to be inclusive. So that's a kind of a big step for us going forward as well.
What were your findings when you started to look at this project and to see the market as a whole in terms of imagery? Did you find that it was just very little kind of imagery kind of focused upon, minorities, or however you want to refer to it? Did you find it was kind of a bit scant out there?
It was a real mixture, actually. And it actually depends on what we were looking at. So if we're thinking of just generally about skin tone, for example, we were very pale by comparison. Some companies did it a lot better than we did, and others were the same as us, in all fairness. If you're looking at abilities, realistically in this industry, the people with other abilities or additional needs just weren't being represented at all. And the same for kind of religious beliefs, we couldn't really see that being reflected. But we didn't just look at our industry, and I think this is important. I'm always a big fan of looking at other industries as well and seeing what other companies are doing. So even last weekend, I was reading the Beano with my son, and I realized they are so inclusive in the Beano. Like, they have such a mixture of abilities and skin tones and just cultural backgrounds, and it's incredible. It was really inspirational, and this was a kids magazine. So I think it's important not just to kind of look at your own industry, look at what other people are doing as well. Taking on your point there, Anne-Marie and Lynn, so we have our own website, obviously, for our clients to use us, but we also create websites for our clients to attract guests. So this is part of our current project, is actually to look at our websites and look at the guidelines that are out there, because there are some really clear guidelines on, you know, button sizes and the calendars and how, you know, font sizes and how things are to be placed. That's our kind of next big project, is to evaluate that, and hopefully that will help our clients also be more inclusive. So that's a big, exciting step. It is nerve-wracking. It's worrying, not knowing exactly if you're doing the right thing and opening yourself up to criticism, but it's definitely, I think it's a step worth taking. Let me ask then, Victoria, thinking about kind of actionable tips, thinking about female property managers and also female guests, what would be your kind of actionable tips that you would recommend to protect the property managers and protect female guests?
I mean, I'd say, like, you know, with us, we obviously build a community to be able to enhance kind of the familiarity between host and guest, which enables that element of trust before any travel takes, you know. And obviously, as we grow, we plan to introduce education, because I believe that with all of this, like, you know, the need for inclusion, it's like this, like you and Damian are doing. It's a fantastic way you're educating people how to be able to move forward and not have a need for this, you know, inclusivity statements, things like that. They're brilliant. I think the inclusivity statements, and I also think, like, I understand this is a sort of book direct seminar we're on here. And in that respect, I'd say, like, as a property manager, I think the biggest thing we kind of notice as maybe travelers and things like that would be that you don't have an about us page, an element of familiarity. And I think that would be really good. So people get to know you and who you are when you travel, along with your inclusivity statement, and potentially some, you know, opportunity to take part and educate your guests on, you know, don't say no, you know, give everyone a chance, be kind, be fair, and some kind of way of adding that in and being a real face behind your property management companies. I mean, that's kind of how we are building our community, and hoping that, you know, it reflects into the sort of book direct movement of, you know, understand it's either way, whether it's book direct or through us or other places, you know, the idea that we can build up this sort of equal opportunities and supplemental incomes for potentially marginalized communities. It's a great system that's going on. So I think with that, the more information you provide to allow people to get to know each other before, I think the less discrimination would happen. And again, with accessibility, the same thing. You know, we realize we have a lot to work on accessibility, and luckily we have members who are helping us get there, and they're very, like, communicative on that and helping us develop it, and would like to you know, work more on that. You know, I know that we've talked about the sort of websites things. Very, very interesting to hear from Lynn and Anne-Marie about, you know, the booking process, because we've always thought about the actual stay processes, like what accessibility options are there, but the booking process is a big part that we can work on, not just educate our community. And that's another thing I'd like to hear from Anne-Marie and Lynn as a question, as a listener, you know, is like, inside the properties, like what is necessary? Are there any specific necessities, you know, apart from the side of the guide dogs, but any specific necessities for, you know, for sight impaired, or, you know, any other accessible options? But yeah, that would be my advice, is like about us, and again, the inclusion statements.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, because I'm thinking, you know, it's different for hosts with fewer properties. They do tend to be more personal. There is that personal touch, but once companies grow and become more agency, they do tend to become a bit more faceless. It's all about the logo and less about the kind of the team and the people behind it. So actually having that.
Yeah, but, you know, behind the brand are people, you know, and no matter how much you bring the brand out, if you're not personable behind it, it's very hard to associate yourself. I realize the scale of someone like Coca-Cola or anyone like that, but even go for Airbnb even has, you know, they all have people behind them and reasons the story started. And I think that's, you know, as a property manager, if you can have your story or anything about you, I personally think And I might be wrong. Again, I'm learning as much as everyone else, and I'm loving listening to this.
I think that's a really great example, Victoria, like things like About Us pages where you can get your message across, as well as a more official kind of manifesto or whatever you want to call it. And video is a really great way to get a message across. And this is a way that you can do that on your own site where you wouldn't be able to do it on a typical listing site or OTA. So something to really set you apart there on your own website, video marketing, and especially getting these messages across.
Anne-Marie and Lynn, could you talk me through recommendations that you have to support people who've got additional needs?
So I think we've discussed the accessibility of websites and booking. I think the whole question of having an accessibility statement, saying something about access for assistance dogs. I've had a quick conversation in the chat about that. So there is a UK Association of Assisted Dogs. So these are bona fide, qualified, properly trained assistance dogs rather than a dog that someone's just trained up on their own volition. So I think about understanding the law about access for assistance dogs, that assistance dogs are allowed into restaurants, hotels, etc., holiday accommodation without any additional charge being levied. And I think, again, from speaking to the others and listening to what Lynn was saying today, you need to get a sense that you are welcome. And therefore, we would strongly recommend staff training, awareness about the law, awareness about sighted guiding, how to guide someone and respond to somebody with sight loss. And on the Guide Dogs website, we have our Be There guidance. So if you're not familiar with interacting with someone with sight loss, it's 3 easy steps to make sure that's possible. So it's not disappearing, it's staying there, it's saying hello, it's asking if someone needs assistance, what kind of assistance, and if you are doing guiding, to describe the environment around you. You know, we're going down the corridor, we're just coming to 3 steps, the lift is on your left here, doing that kind of thing. But in terms of kind of extra, or not extra, that sounds wrong, but the appropriate provisions for a guest with a guide dog, Lynn's probably best able to tell us through just some of the small things but important things that people can do in accommodation, whether it's a hotel or whether it's a rented flat or cottage. So Lynn, would you like just maybe talk us through some of the practical things people can do?
Yes, I think in probably rented accommodation, cottages, lodges, things like that, I think it's really helpful if there are things like towels for the dogs to lie on, an area which is specific for them to spend. Even if you're in a country place, it's very handy to know exactly where you can take your dog and where it's not going to offend anybody. Bowls, I've had experience in some hotels where they go over and above, and they have bowls, treats, towels, and covers for the floor. Covers for the floor helps the rented a property or the hotel as much as we do. The dogs like something to lie on, but it's added extra luggage for us if we have to take it. But it also saves any smells from the dogs going on to the property's carpets. So it kind of works both ways. People who are trained to deal with people with any disability, I think, is a huge help to ourselves. Like Anne-Marie said, as far as helping you get from A to B, if you've got a guide dog, we tend to we'll ask the dog to follow. So probably training in the fact that you don't shout on the dog while you're taking someone to their room, and not distracting the dogs, things like that. But I think it is, if the people in the hotel are trained and know the rights of a guide dog owner, and if they're in any doubt, all they need to do is ask, because I think that's a conception that people have, that maybe it's embarrassing for us or it's difficult for us to answer questions. But I think for majority of people with guide dogs, it's not. So it's just to encourage people to ask if they have any questions on how to help or anything that they can do to make things better.
And I think Lynn, and there's another guide dog owner on the call as well, Sarah, who's one of our campaigners, will probably agree with me. You've probably been asked the most ridiculous questions about your dogs, but no one minds answering those questions because, you know, as you say, a confession of ignorance is the first step to enlightenment. So if, you know, someone asks you a daft question, it's not, then they know afterwards. So there's no daft questions, just obviously be polite, but ask. If you're in doubt, just ask.
Yeah. I was actually wondering, you were talking there about the kind of the guiding through the properties. I was thinking not everybody is able to do that. You know, some properties you just go in yourself. Is it possible to do like recordings? Would that be appreciated, to just record, you know, this is how you get through the property and this is what's on the left and on the right and so on, and then you can send that in advance of a guest arriving at the property?
What do you think, Lynn? Would that be a good idea to be talked through the property?
I think that's always something that could be available. It's not something that I would personally use, because you would need to know exactly where everything is to put yourself in the position where you know which directions that you are going in with the recording. So I would probably just do my own scan round a property or round a room or round somewhere. But there is, I would say that it probably would be useful for some disabilities and some visual people.
I think the most important thing is speak, ask. You know,
yes.
Just as Lynn says, and as Damian said at the beginning, it's about accommodating guests. So people are your guests, you welcome them on an equal basis. And if you're in any doubt as to what they need, you don't wait for them to come to you. You say, what can I do for you?
And I think what companies have got to realise and put across is the fact that we are visually impaired only, or doesn't matter what disability, it's a disability, but you're still a person and you want to be treated the same as everybody else.
And then Anne-Marie, if I could just ask a question. Obviously, since COVID, and even the shift over the last couple of years has been towards automation and you know, self-check-in and automated tools. Would you be more likely to choose a property, like a rental property, that will where somebody will greet you and check you in over any kind of automated self-check-in experience?
Yes, I think we would. I think we would probably go for the personal touch, as far as somebody showing us into the property, because especially on the like Helen was saying there about the recording, they can give you a quick review of everything, tell you where things are and spending areas and where's good for the dogs. You can get a kind of overview of the local area from them as well. So yeah, we probably would go for the personal touch. I'm not saying we would never go for it. It would very much depend on how you could, which kind of properties you could find. But I think in the main, we would go for the personal one.
Yeah, I think it depends as well who you're traveling with. So if you're traveling with a sighted partner or friend, you know, you're perhaps looking to them to do the automated check-in and look at the layout of the accommodation. But if, like Lynn, her partner's a guide dog owner as well, you'd probably be looking for something with a more personal touch.
Yes, I think that's quite true. I think if you've got a sighted partner, then your options are there for them to manage the situation in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Kelly, can I just I was thinking, like, it sounds like there's a real need for some kind of collation of everything, of education, like just even a web page, which I know yourself and Damian build, but something where members can, property managers and anyone can come and have all this kind of information, like, you know, sight impaired, like how to help them, the inclusivity statements, add stuff to their, I mean, it's just, it sounds like there's a big need, all the questions coming through from just one webinar. I'm sure there's so many more out there, and it could be added to and cover every accessible, inclusive question people have.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Victoria. And this is the kind of the thought process going behind this. So yeah, we will keep everyone tuned on that. Actually, I just want to raise a point. Maya has just raised a point about face-to-face check-ins. And this is what I'm all about as well. I know we have to be careful in this day and age, pandemic and all. But I think that level of hospitality of face-to-face check-ins is a huge, not only are you building upon your guest relationship, but also, you know, you're furthering your chances of that guest booking directly with you time upon time again. So yes. I'm absolutely with you there, Maya.
Definitely.
Okay, well then let's call it a wrap for today. My overarching advice, if I was just going to give one tip before we leave, is to be brave, because it is a big thing. Inclusivity is huge. It can be a bit overwhelming, but taking steps in the right direction can only be a positive thing. So that would be my final words for today. Damian, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Kelly. I think personally for me, it's just about education. I've learned so much today. And I think, you know, a lot of other people probably have as well. We've so much more to learn, but just to be open to it, take our own assumptions out of the situation and just try and put ourselves in the shoes of all of our guests and kind of think, what do they actually need? What is the mindset? And try and get that message across. So yeah, I'd like to thank you all for coming along and our guests. Kelly and I will continue to spread this message, and we will be delivering another webinar very soon. And we will hopefully be able to work with a lot of property managers out there on mission statements, policies, etc. And if you'd like to contact us, I'm on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest place. It's Damian Sheridan. Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you so much to Anne-Marie, Lynn and Victoria for joining us, and for you all as well. So yeah, we'd just like to say goodbye. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.